Hey there, I'm David. I've been working as a plumber for about 7 years now. My daily routine usually involves fixing things like leaking pipes, clogged drains, and broken faucets. But every now and then, I get a call that's different, something that's not just about tightening a few bolts or swapping out a valve. This particular job? Well, it started like any other, but I had no idea what was really in store for me when I walked through that door. It was a Friday afternoon, and I was wrapping up my last job of the day when my phone rang. The caller was a woman named Amanda, and she sounded like she was in full-on panic mode. "It's flooding in my bathroom," she said, her voice cracking with urgency. You could tell it was more than just a busted pipe. Something fell off. Without a second thought, I grabbed my tools and headed out to the address she gave me. The neighborhood was one of those pristine suburban areas, perfectly trimmed lawns, oversized houses, but there was a strange loneliness to it all. Amanda's house looked just like the others, a large 2-story brick home with big windows and a wide porch, yet the place felt oddly silent, like it was missing something. I made my way up the path to her front door and knocked. She answered almost instantly, as though she'd been waiting for me. Amanda appeared to be in her early 30s, with dark hair pulled back loosely and hazel eyes that met mine, a mixture of relief and something else I couldn't quite place. She wore a light, form-fitting dress that seemed to highlight her figure, especially the way it hugged her curves. She was stunning, no doubt about it, but there was something deeper about her, something that made my heart skip a beat as she welcomed me inside. "Thank God you're here," she said, her hand grazing my arm as she led me down the hallway. The touch was brief, but I felt the warmth of her skin, that subtle spark of something unspoken between us. As I followed her, I caught glimpses of her life. Photos on the walls, happy moments frozen in time, a smiling couple on a beach, a wedding photo. But despite the smiles in those pictures, I couldn't help but feel there was more to this story. I couldn't help but wonder where her husband was. Maybe he was away on a business trip or stuck in a meeting, but there was no sign of him anywhere. We made our way to the bathroom, and sure enough, water had already started to pool on the floor, creeping toward the hallway. I set my tools down and dove into the work, trying to keep my focus, but it wasn't easy. Not with Amanda standing so close. Her presence was almost like a distraction. Every movement she made seemed to draw my attention, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching me, like she was studying each step I took. The atmosphere between us was thick with something unspoken. It was the kind of tension that speeds up your pulse and makes you feel hyper-aware of every breath. As I knelt to adjust the pipes under the sink, Amanda crouched beside me, so close that I could feel the heat of her body brushing against mine. Her perfume, a soft floral scent, was all around me, and for a moment, I found myself distracted by it. My mind was pulled away from the task at hand, and I had to fight to regain my focus. She leaned in slightly, her hand resting gently on my forearm. "Do you need anything? Maybe a drink?" Her voice had softened, almost intimate now. I looked up, our eyes meeting for a brief moment. There was something about the way she looked at me, something that felt raw and vulnerable, and I could feel my usual resolve start to weaken. My professionalism was slipping under the weight of her proximity. "No, I'm good. Just about done here," I replied, trying to sound steady even though my heart was racing. But Amanda didn't pull away. She stayed close, her fingers lightly brushing the edge of my sleeve. The warmth of her touch seeped through my shirt, and a chill ran down my spine. This wasn't just about fixing pipes anymore. It felt like something deeper was going on, something I didn't know how to control. The touches weren't accidental. They were deliberate. When I finished tightening the last bolt, I stood up, wiping my hands on my jeans. Amanda did the same, but she stood a little too close for comfort. Our bodies were almost touching now, the tension hanging heavy in the air. I could feel her breath on my neck, each inhale a little faster than the last, like she was trying to steady herself. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her hand brushed against my arm once more, lingering this time. I swallowed hard, trying to ignore the heat that seemed to be building between us. "It's no problem," I said, my voice low. My gaze shifted to the door, looking for an excuse to break away from this dangerously close space. But Amanda wasn't backing off. She stepped even closer, her hand gliding up my arm, fingers tracing a slow path across my shoulder. My pulse raced as I felt the walls I'd built around myself begin to crack. This wasn't like the usual flirtations I'd dealt with before. This felt different, and I knew I needed to be careful. There was something unspoken between us, something I couldn't quite put into words, but I knew it was dangerous. "I don't know what I would have done without you," she murmured, her gaze searching mine. I opened my mouth to say something, to break the spell that was hanging in the air, but before I could speak, she closed the distance between us. Her lips brushed against mine, soft at first, hesitant, almost as if she were testing the waters. My mind screamed at me to stop, to pull away, but my body betrayed me. I found myself leaning in, responding to the warmth of her lips, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. The kiss deepened, and suddenly, the world outside seemed to fade away. It was just us, our bodies pressed together, hands exploring, breaths mingling. Every touch, every movement was like a spark, lighting something inside me that I couldn't ignore. The intensity was overwhelming. For a moment, I forgot everything, the job, the fact that I was in a client's house, even the wedding photos on the walls. All that mattered was the way Amanda felt in my arms. Her hands moved against my back, pulling me closer. It was like I couldn't get enough, like I was being pulled into something I couldn't control. But then reality came rushing back, crashing in with the sound of water dripping behind us. I pulled away abruptly, my breath ragged, my heart racing in my chest. Amanda's eyes were wide, her lips still parted, as if she hadn't expected me to stop. I stepped back, trying to put some space between us, trying to regain control of the situation. "Amanda," I started, my voice low, trying to sound calm. "We shouldn't." She looked down, a faint blush creeping up her cheeks. She took a deep breath, running a hand through her dark hair. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but there was no regret in her voice, just that same quiet longing, that same pull that had ignited between us moments before. I knew what we were doing was wrong. She was married, and this wasn't just harmless flirting. It was something deeper, something that crossed a line. The weight of that realization settled heavily on my chest. But despite knowing I should walk away, every instinct in me was pulling me back toward her. "I don't want to stop," she said softly, her hand reaching out to touch my arm again, sending that same warm, electric charge through me. I swallowed hard, fighting against the pull. My resolve was crumbling, and I could feel the heat between us only growing stronger, more intense. She stepped closer again, her fingers tracing the outline of my chest, lightly brushing over the muscles beneath my shirt. "I can't," I muttered, though my voice was weak, betraying me. "You don't have to say anything," Amanda whispered, her lips brushing against my ear as she leaned in, her breath warm and intoxicating. "I know you feel it too." I closed my eyes, trying desperately to will myself to step away, to break the spell she seemed to have over me. But it was harder than I'd ever imagined. The room was charged with tension. I could still feel the warmth of Jessica's touch lingering on my skin, her scent clinging to the air like a perfume I couldn't shake off. I knew I should leave. I had to leave, but my legs felt like lead, and the voice in my head that usually guided me was drowned out by the pounding of my heart. Then, just as I was about to take a step toward the door, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps outside the bathroom. I froze. The door opened slowly, and there he was, a man in his late 30s, tall, broad-shouldered, with a confident posture that screamed authority. His presence was sudden, like a storm cloud on a bright day. The kind of man you notice as soon as he enters a room. He had a sharp jawline, dark hair, and a pair of piercing blue eyes that were now locked on me. I had never seen him before, but I could tell immediately he was important. "Jessica," he said, his voice smooth but with a certain edge to it. Jessica's hand was still resting lightly on my arm. I could feel her fingers tighten slightly, as if to hold on to something solid in that moment of tension. "Matt," Jessica said, her voice faltering slightly as she stepped away from me. There was a quiet, almost nervous hesitation in her voice that I hadn't expected. "This is Mike." He fixed the plumbing. The way she said it, the hesitation, The way she almost stumbled over her words sent a chill through me. It was as if she was trying to cover something, and suddenly I felt like an intruder, like a character in a story I didn't belong in. The room seemed to shrink around us. Matt glanced at her, then at me, his expression unreadable. I felt like I was being sized up in a way that made me uncomfortable. "Micah?" His eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't seem angry. Just curious. It was the kind of curiosity that made my skin crawl. He reached out to shake my hand, his grip firm, but the contact fell off. There was an unspoken challenge in the way he looked at me, and I felt it instantly. I forced a smile and shook his hand, trying to keep my cool. "Yeah, I'm the plumber. Just finished fixing the issue." "I see," Matt said. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, a current of tension I couldn't quite place. "Thanks for coming by, Mike. I didn't realize the problem was that bad." "No problem," I replied, still trying to mask the awkwardness of the situation. "I just wanted to make sure it was fixed before I left." I glanced at Jessica, and I could tell from the way her eyes shifted that something wasn't right. There was a strange mix of relief and guilt in her expression, like she was caught in a situation she didn't know how to navigate. I couldn't help but wonder what had really been going on here. Was Matt aware of what had just happened? Of the tension that had been hanging in the air? The silence between us stretched on, uncomfortable and thick. Finally, Matt broke it. "Jessica, I think I'll go change. I'll leave you two to finish up." I nodded, not sure what else to say. He turned and left the bathroom, and the moment he was out of sight, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Jessica immediately turned toward me, her face pale, her eyes wide. She was still visibly shaken. "I didn't expect him to come home so early," she whispered, her voice shaky. She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine, as if looking for some kind of reassurance. I thought you'd be gone before he came back." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to tell her I had to go, to walk away from this whole mess. But the part of me that had been drawn to her, that had felt the heat of her touch just moments ago, wasn't ready to leave. I couldn't lie to myself. There was something about her that made me stay, even though I knew I should run as far as I could. "Jessica," I said softly, my voice low and steady. "You didn't tell me you were married." Her face flushed, and she stepped back, clearly trying to gather herself. I didn't mean for things to happen this way. It's just things have been complicated between us for a while now. Matt, he's not the man I married anymore. I don't know what's happened to us, but we've grown apart." I took a deep breath. Her words only added to the confusion swirling in my head. I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that this was just an unfortunate set of circumstances, a woman lost in a marriage that no longer made sense, looking for some kind of connection. But another part of me knew that it was wrong, that this was dangerous territory. "Jessica, I don't know if this is the right time, or if it ever will be," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. What just happened wasn't okay. You're married." She looked at me with eyes full of desperation, her lips trembling. "I know," she whispered. "I know it's wrong, but I can't stop feeling. I can't stop wanting more. I haven't felt alive in so long." My heart raced as I processed her words. The weight of the situation crashed down on me. I was a part of something that shouldn't exist, something that could tear apart her life. And yet, here I was standing in her bathroom, unable to walk away from her. Before I could say anything else, Matt's voice called out from the other room. "Jess, I'll be in the kitchen when you're ready." The spell between Jessica and me shattered instantly. She stepped back, blinking rapidly as if coming out of a trance. I should go see him," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "You should go too. I don't want him to get suspicious." My mind was racing, my emotions in turmoil. I nodded, unsure of what else to say. "I'll head out. I'll finish up the paperwork and leave." She didn't say anything more as she moved past me, heading down the hallway toward the kitchen. I stood there for a moment, trying to collect myself, my mind still foggy from the emotions that had been stirred up. I had to leave. There was nothing more to say. But as I made my way to the door, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Something about Jessica's words, her touch, her longing, it felt unfinished. The kiss we'd shared, the heat between us, It had opened a door I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through. When I stepped out into the cool evening air, I felt the weight of it all pressing down on me. I could still hear her voice in my head, feel the lingering touch of her fingers on my arm. But I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't come back here. Not now. Not ever. But as I drove away, a strange unease settled in the pit of my stomach. Was it really over? Or had I just walked away from something I couldn't understand yet?